I'm a felon. Of course I wash my socks in the sink and my drawers in the tub. I'm a felon. Of course every time I take a dump I remove one leg from my pants in case something jumps off. I'm a felon. After I made dinner, I call chow call. I'm a felon. I don't go anywhere without a pack already pre-made up. Just in case I go to jail, I can make bail, you know what I mean? I'm a felon. Of course I'm making this TikTok video incarcerated right now. I'm a felon. I do not, and I repeat, I do not drop the soap.
DC The Voice, Alabama Prisoner Profiles. What's going down with y'all, man? Make sure y'all like, sub, share, comment on the video. Cash App, PayPal, Bama Prison Files with 2 S's, man. Appreciate the super thanks. Hit that join button and become a member for $2 a month, man. Y'all know what's going on with the membership, man. Say, man, announcement. The last count I had was 39, but it's done jumped up to over 40, like 42, 43, maybe even 44, something like that as far as deaths so far in the Alabama system for 2024. Now, y'all out of state people, I want to ask y'all, how many deaths have y'all had in y'all's prison so far this year? Right? One last thing, y'all are not that important. It's frustrating chasing these people down for a 30-minute to an hour phone call, especially if you done reached out to me for us. First, if you want to remain part of the problem by not getting your shit out there, especially if you're former staff, that's fine. You have an obligation to get your shit out there if you really give a damn about contributing to a solution. Y'all are not presidents of the United States important. No occupation I've heard of, you know what I'm saying, people are doing is of a level of importance to where you need to be all secretive and all that, even though I'm willing to work with you on that. It can be anonymous. You know what I'm saying? I'll change your voice up for every single word you say, just like I did for that dude way back with that interview that wanted to remain anonymous. Probably except for one dude who's now a cop. You know what I'm saying? And he's probably like the only one I can understand, like, alright, you know what I'm saying? But I'm taking a risk both ways on both sides. You know, all I can do is try to do what I say I'm gonna do and treat people right. That's the only way I remain protected. So y'all keep that in mind when I'm trying to bring y'all's ass on these shows, like consistently hitting you up like, come on, man, y'all ain't doing shit. Your factory or manual labor, you know what I'm saying, career is safe with me, I can assure you, like, come on. Now today, right, we have an Alabama correctional officer that's done went federal. Let's hop right into that right now. August 2023. A federal jury on Thursday convicted a former Alabama prison sergeant in the assault of an inmate. A Middle District of Alabama jury found Devlin Williams, a 37-year-old former correctional supervisor at Staten Correctional Facility, guilty of deprivation of rights under the color of law, falsification of records, and obstruction of justice. Williams and a former prison officer, Larry Manigan Jr., 41, were initially convicted or charged in a 5-count indictment handed down in 2021. The evidence at trial showed on March 8, 2018, Williams assaulted an inmate identified only as DH in the main hallway of the healthcare unit. Witnesses at trial testified Williams repeatedly punched and kicked DH, who was on the ground and not resisting or posing a threat to any person or corrections officer. Williams continued the beating by hitting DH multiple times with the collapsible baton. The government presented evidence at trial that after the beating, Williams and Manigan, who previously pleaded guilty to obstruction, attempted to cover up the beating. Williams made false statements about the assault to an Alabama Department of Corrections investigator and prepared a false report about the incident. Quote, "This defendant is being held accountable for using excessive force against an inmate and preparing a false report to cover up his unlawful behavior," unquote, said Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division. Quote, "Prisoners, like everyone else, have the right to be free from such needless and extreme violence at the hand of law enforcement officers," unquote. The FBI Mobile Field Office and the Alabama Department of Corrections Law Enforcement Services Division investigated the case. Assistant U.S. Attorney Eric Counts for the Middle District of Alabama and trial attorney Anna Godford of the Civil Rights Division Criminal Section prosecuted the case. Quote, while most corrections officers try each day to do the right thing, unfortunately some abuse the authority they are granted, unquote, said U.S. Attorney Sandra J. Stewart. Quote, everyone deserves protection under law, and my office will hold any officer criminally responsible for violating the civil rights of a person in his or her custody, unquote. Quote, there is no place for this type of behavior in law enforcement, unquote, said Special Agent in Charge Paul Brown of the FBI Mobile Field Office. Williams and Mannigan were awaiting sentencing. So, back then, months goes by, here we are, this week, February 2024. A former Alabama Department of Corrections sergeant was sentenced to more than 5 years in prison Wednesday for using excessive force on an inmate and then trying to cover up the beating, prosecutors said. Devlin Williams, a 38-year-old former sergeant at State and Correctional Facility in Elmore County, was convicted by a Montgomery federal jury for deprivation of rights under color of law, falsification of records, and obstruction of justice. He was sentenced to 5 years and 3 months in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release. Quote, this defendant was a sergeant who was supposed to set an example for those he supervised, and instead he callously abused his authority and brutalized a vulnerable inmate during a time of need, unquote, said Assistant Attorney General Kristen Clark of the Justice Department Civil Rights Division. Quote, the Justice Department will not tolerate this type of violent conduct inside our jails and prisons, and we will continue to prosecute corrections officials who violate the rights of people in their custody. This sentencing should send a clear message to officials employed in correctional settings that they are not above the law and will be held accountable when they break it, unquote. Williams took a suicidal state and inmate only identified as initial DH from the prison chapel to the facility's healthcare unit according to court documents and trial evidence. Instead of taking the inmate to the infirmary, Williams stopped the unit's hallway and assaulted dude, where he assaulted and taunted the inmate by yelling, quote, since you want to die, I'm going to help you, unquote. Witnesses testified Williams repeatedly punched and kicked the inmate who was lying on the ground in the fetal position, not resisting or posing a threat. Goodness Christ. Quote, while most members of law enforcement serve honorably and professionally, some are not so dedicated. No shit, unquote, said Acting U.S. Attorney Jonathan S. Ross for the Middle District of Alabama. Quote, Williams savagely beat and taunted an inmate who was not resisting or posing a threat, then lied to conceal his crime. They must be held responsible for their actions. Failure to do so would discredit the noble service of every other officer and weaken the public's trust in those who were sworn to protect. It's already weak as fuck, my boy. It's already weak as fuck. Quote, former corrections officer Devlin Williams not only attacked the victim while transporting him to receive critical care for suicidal ideation, but also attempted to cover up his crimes and intimidate witnesses, unquote, added Assistant Director Michael D. Nordwall of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division. Quote, the FBI remains committed to protecting the dignity and civil rights of individuals in custody, and we will investigate any law enforcement and corrections officers who abuse their authority. So, this man filed a swift little motion to reconsider, motion for a new trial, got a swift answer from the courts, and I got a little bit about their explanation in the discussion down here, right? Motion to reconsider for a new trial or acquittal. After a 4-day jury trial, the jury found the defendant guilty of 3 counts. 1, willfully depriving DH of his constitutional rights while acting under the color of law by striking DH with his feet and a collapsible baton in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 242. Number 2, falsifying records by falsely writing in an incident report that DH, quote, was not kicked at any time by correctional staff, unquote, in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 1519. And 3, knowingly engaging in misleading conduct by falsely telling an Alabama Department of Corrections investigator that he did not kick DH in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 512, subsection B, subsection 3. Relying almost exclusively on his own self-serving trial testimony about the events on the evening in questioning, Defendant alleges the trial evidence is insufficient to support the 3 convictions against him and that he should be acquitted or alternatively given a new trial. The government responds that there is more than enough evidence to prove the defendant's guilt when the totality of the witness testimony is considered. The court notes that at least 6 witnesses, nurses, Terry Sawash, Marquita Sanders, and Yolanda Marlowe, correctional officers Larry Manigan, Jamie Smith, and Marshall Davis, including co-defendant Larry Manigan, provided testimony in direct contrast to the defendant's version of events. And in particular, Manigan testified the defendant did in fact strike and kick inmate DH in the healthcare unit hallway, even though DH posed no threat, was unarmed, i.e. had no knife or other weapon, was not resisting, was curled up in a protective/fetal position, and had done nothing that required the use of force, let alone striking and kicking. Manigan also testified to the defendant's effort to concoct a false story that inmate DH had a knife in the healthcare unit hallway. Another witness, correctional officer Jamie Smith, testified he personally picked up the subject knife from inside the chapel and personally took it to the shift office, i.e. there was never a knife in the healthcare unit hallway, and that defendant later contacted him and tried to get him to lie and concoct the story that the knife was in the healthcare unit hallway. There is evidence from several nurses in the healthcare unit who testified they did not see inmate DH do or say or have anything on or about him that justify any use of force, and that they saw defendant kick inmates DH. Additional evidence was provided by the government showing defendant denied to investigators, Agent William Caulfield, and in an incident report that he had kicked DH. As such, there was overwhelming evidence that defendant not only kicked DH in the healthcare unit hallway when there was no legitimate penal reason to do so, but that defendant lied about it both on a written incident report and in verbal statements to investigators. The court sees no reason to discuss the evidence any further, especially since defendant's motion appears to be nothing more than a rehash of his closing argument and relies almost exclusively on defendant's own self-serving trial testimony. Defendant has failed to demonstrate that, based on the evidence presented, no reasonable jury could find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Nor has he shown that the evidence weighs so heavily against the verdict that a serious miscarriage of justice may have occurred. Therefore, to the extent defendant seeks reconsiderations of the trial court's previous Rule 29 rulings, a judgment of acquittal, or a new trial based on the evidence presented at trial, the defendant's motion is due to be denied. Also in his motion, defendant seeks a new trial based on this court's pretrial and trial rulings concerning certain proffered evidence and argument, e.g. an internal administrative investigation, the poor conditions of the Alabama prison system, the civil lawsuit filed by inmate DH and his criminal and disciplinary history, excerpts from a video interview, specific instances of defendant's good conduct and character, and defendant's potential punishment, made the basis of the government's pretrial motions in limine and trial objections. Defendant failed to show any error, let alone error of such degree that a new trial is necessary. The court notes the defendant's motion merely recites his motion in limine and trial arguments and provides very little substantive argument or legal reasoning for why the proffered evidence was admissible or why the court's rulings were wrong or in error. In fact, at trial, when defense counsel was questioned by the court as to the relevancy of much of the evidentiary issues made the basis of the government's motions and objections, defense counsel repeatedly asserted the defendant should be permitted to present this evidence, quote, because the jury should know it, unquote. Such repeated responses only confirm the government's position and the court's concerns that the defendant intended to offer this evidence for an impermissible purpose, for no reason basically, had no direct relevancy to the issues in the case, and was intended to confuse the jury. Defendant's motion for a new trial, especially in the absence of legal argument, continues to underscore the improper purpose for which the defendant sought to admit that evidence. The defendant's argument were unconvincing then, as so they remain now. Lord have mercy, man. Let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section, man. You see that other officer, he said, hey, this is going too far. Usually we can lie and cover shit up in this straight, but these folks done charged, bro. I'm finna have to go and testify and save my own majority of my ass and get bro up out of here. All those nurses and inmates and stuff like that. Hey, you better go. This the FBI, we ain't playing. Y'all better tell us what you saw. Y'all's ass finna be the fuck up out here in the handcuffs. Too, you feel what I'm saying, for obstruction. Lord, whooped his ass, basically, you know what I'm saying, infirmary hallway, you know what I'm saying, just wow, you know, and he took the little 5, which ain't shit, you know what I'm saying, in the feds, you do 85% of that, but I feel like maybe a 10 or something like that, you know what I'm saying, that shit is still too light for what these people are doing to inmates in the prison system. 5 years, that ain't, if anything, all that puts in my head is shit. I cop out to a 5 if I whoop his ass or I ever catch a case. You know, they gonna be soft on me. I do me a little 5, little nickel, you know what I'm saying? I do me a little 5 and be out, then go drive trucks or whatever the fuck, you know, I was probably gonna end up doing in the first place on this little stop in the prison system. I don't really give a fuck for real, at least enough to stay here and work past the being jaded and numb, you know what I'm saying, to this environment and the actions and shit like that of people and the events that coincide and unfold in these facilities. Y'all let me know what y'all think about this in the comment section, man. Like, share, subscribe, Cash App, PayPal, Bama Prison Files with 2 S's, man. Shout out all the old supporters. Shout out all the new supporters, man. Hit that join button and become a member of the channel, y'all. I'm gonna be cooking up something else for the members here. Probably something a little personal for y'all if I can, right? DC the Voice, Alabama Prisoner Profiles.